Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Here's a quote before this episode. The discipline of suffering, of great suffering. Do you not know that only this discipline has created all enhancements of man so far? That tension of the soul in unhappiness, which cultivates its strength, its shudders face to face with great ruin, its inventiveness and courage in enduring, preserving, interpreting, and exploiting suffering, and whatever has been granted to it of profundity, secret, mask, spirit, cunning, greatness, was it not granted to it through suffering, through the discipline of great suffering? Friedrich Nietzsche. Today, I want to talk about a core value: urgency, having a sense of urgency or embodying urgency, its relationship with suffering, its relationship with having a goal, where it comes from, what it means, the value of it, and some of the fruit, I think, of embodying a sense of urgency, embodying the concept of urgency that's been lived out in Culture Matters and especially the Culture Matters podcast. I was reviewing the numbers recently, and it looks to be that in one year, 540 or so podcasts, trying to figure out, is it 520 or 570? 540, I think, is the number. So, um, recorded in one year as an example of urgency. What's the fruit of that investment into you, our listeners? What's the fruit of that investment into the relationships, the very real relationships that I have with amazing people that come on the Culture Matters podcast, whether it's once or with regularity? And the role that urgency has played not only in my life, in the valuable results that have come into my life, but in some case studies and other, both company, both leadership, representative, and civilization, that I think urgency played a role. I've been doing a lot of reflecting lately on the values of what makes a Culture Matters advisor. What are the values of a culture architect? What are the values that we, as a group of intense, intelligent, service minded people, show up to our clients, our client partners, our Culture Matters? What do we stand for from a behavioral standpoint? And how can that be described in a way that is accessible to those that would aspire to that or those that are embodying that? And urgency is weighing heavily on my mind. So I'm going to talk firstly about, and of course, that quote will make more sense as we go into this conversation. I love, God, what an exciting quote. It just tears you apart. So, what's the definition of urgency? The importance requiring, in a noun form, importance requiring swift action, the quality of being pressing or demanding immediate attention. That word attention has been almost thematized in this show as a consequence of the Peterson interviews preparation. And going back to just to highlight a recent episode on the Culture Matters podcast, which I believe was episode 974. Episode 974, preparation. We prepare in order to serve at the highest. Go listen to that episode, 974 in the Culture Matters podcast after this to look at another Culture Matters value, preparation. In the spirit of that interview with Peterson, there was a sense of urgency that started about 10 months and change prior to that engagement, that the spirit of preparation, so right, and urgency worked together. It was long in the it was long away, it was way into the future, that opportunity. But there was a sense of urgency that led to preparation. Go listen to the episode of the Culture Matters podcast, preparation. Today I want to talk about urgency, and embodying a sense of urgency creates value and demonstrates our values. Now, attention, back to that word attention. That was and has been a theme. If you listen to the McGilchrist interview, attend his book, this profound book, The Matter with Things, the emphasis on what attention actually is and how it impacts our fundamental being as individuals, as human beings and becomings, what role attention plays in our lives at every level. So it's interesting to me that in the definition, urgency, importance requiring swift action, the quality of being pressing or demanding immediate attention, this or that, right? Discernment, there's a hierarchy of uh, tasks that have to get done. They are valued in a certain order based on my values, and my values or what I value is reflected in my attention. In a Petersonian sense, our attention reflects what we value, and what we value reflects our values, whether those are explicit or not, whether we are aware of them or not. An earnest and persistent quality, insistence, an earnest and persistent. So the earnestness I'm thinking is like, how would you describe earnestness? Integrity, honest, forthright. I want to say authentic, but not in some solipsistic sense, more so in a reflective or reflectory or interactive or engaged sense. Earnest, because this is an important piece. Earnest, earnest and persistent quality. Insistence. Because the relationship with time and a goal comes to mind when we're talking about earnesty, not earnesty, urgency, and being earnest, being self-aware around the goal, the aim, the responsibilities that it connotes, the sacrifice that's implied in like action, in act, because action takes discernment. Action takes pushing things away, other things away, even if those other things are just internal impulses, or oh, let me do this first, or oh, let me distract myself with this, or and that leads us to procrastination, putting things off till tomorrow, right? Ben Franklin said, procrastination is the art of living in yesterday, avoiding today, and destroying tomorrow. So earnestness is authentic seriousness, not performative, not forced. It's when someone's words, actions, and intentions align. Now that sounds like Zoroaster. Good words, the Persian prophet. Good words, good thoughts, good deeds. If it's when someone's words, actions, and intentions align with a deep sense of purpose, that brings me to Nietzsche. He who has a why can bear almost any how. That brings us to our quote earlier. And what is the role between suffering and urgency, or suffering and having a vision? The discipline of suffering, of great suffering. Do you not know that only this discipline has created all enhancements of man so far. So the argument in that is, in Nietzschean sense, is suffering and taking on heavier burdens. That's a prerequisite to all of the enhancements of humankind, of mankind. That the the betterment, the quality, the value, the positive. The positive is a consequence of the negative. Is has a as in a McGilchrist, as he would say, and I think it's chapter 20 of The Matter with Things, the coincidentia oppositorum, coincidentia oppositorum, the value of opposites. Good and evil need one another. I am inextricably linked to my enemy. My most fateful enemy reflects, yeah, I might be closer in curiosity and spirit to my most ardent foe, my greatest enemy. We understand one another better than my closest friend, who's just a mirror of who I think I am and who they have agreed that I am. That isn't them, that they admire or adore. There's a nihilism in that. There's a falseness in that. But my enemy gives me purpose. My enemy reflects back through me my supposed moral value set, my virtues at every level, good, at the top of the iceberg and below the surface. So urgency, or let's go to, actually, I want to finish this thing on earnestness, because I got to earnestness from looking at the definition of urgency. This topic is about urgency, the value of urgency, and I want to talk about the necessity of a goal and the necessity of pain and suffering and actually being considered potentially a loser from society, being at the at the feet of the label of loser or the lost from a self projecting standpoint or self-perceiving standpoint, like that failure and adversity, or yeah, adversity and adversity's fruit, yeah, inevitable consequence, which is the low, the fail, the bottom, the defeat. The defeat, there's beauty in the defeat. There's beauty in the tragedy. That meaning has is a consequence of that ping pong of the tragedy and the triumph. That immense purpose can actually it has an inverse relationship with success. Like if you've just succeeded, you'll have, now you're going to be a nihilist and depressed. And if you have just failed, but you have a vision and you have a goal and you have the the willingness to fail, the willingness to strive, the faith in yourself as like a potential, as like, okay, that's who I can be. That's not where I'm at right now, but I believe in that, right? The visionary lies to himself, the liar to everyone else. That becomes very meaningful and exciting. And then anxiety that would be crippling and debilitating with that goal actually becomes a freaking super engine in that highest level automobile that you're driving towards your goal. You actually, when things are the worst, if you have the spirit, if you have that spirit that's tied to a goal, that's tied to, that's driven by a sense of urgency, and you've actually suffered adequately, you had enough suffering adequately, adequate suffering, necessary suffering, that positive is going to be much stronger coming from a negative. Earnestness, so authentic seriousness, not performative, not forced. It's as if it's in, given. It's given. It's innate, but it's enhanced through action, through the earnest persistence. It's within you, but it comes to the surface from the actions. It takes actions for the boil. The water is boiling, but if there's not enough action, not enough consistent movement, it doesn't go to a boil. It's just warm. To get to boil, you need time, and you need action. And the action has to be over a period of time. Whether that, 440 podcasts in a year. I'm not the same person. We are not the same company. We are not the same brand. We are not the same culture. We are not the same guest roster. The relationships are not the same after 540 episodes. I don't have the same relationship with myself as I did before. I don't have the same relationship with you as I did before. I don't have the same relationships as those that have come back, that came back on the show for that period of time, that may have been on 3 times, 4 times, 10 times, or just once. Nothing is the same because of the time elapsing and the actions and intentions and preparations and the urgency, the flood of emotion, the flood of passions, the flood of pain transferred through a purposeful intention as a consequence of that goal to hit those uh, objectives, to do have this many conversations and with myself and others. Like, there's so much wrapped up into that earnestness. It has a positive moral or undertone, genuine effort, integrity, and heartfelt conviction. Urgency without earnestness becomes chaos. Earnestness without urgency becomes passivity. Together, they create focused, purposeful action. Whoa. So the definition of urgent, now it's time for reflection, but how urgent are you? I am thinking of a quote from Maps a Meaning in the beginning. I've shared this before. The very fact that a general problem has gripped and assimilated the whole of a person is a guarantee that the speaker has really experienced it and perhaps gained something from his suffering. He will then reflect the problem back in his personal he will then reflect the problem in his personal life and thereby show us the truth. I have absolutely, it's like two extremes. Unbelievable intensity, obsession, urgency on one hand, inept sloth on the other. In 30 Days of Thought, about there's an excerpt about procrastination is the only true death. And I was writing that, tumbling and tussling with components of my identity that represent sloth, stagnation, decay, nihilism, fear and trembling, synonyms of urgency, immediacy, priority, promptness, haste, the morphology or etymology of urgent. So, uh, I believe it comes from urgentum and orge, uh, urgere. Urgent comes from the Latin ur, urgentum, urgentum, um, meaning to press, to push, to drive, to compel. The leader that is not pressing, pushing, driving, compelling. Where is everyone else's attention going? It's going to be going to other. This is like the impulse in all of us. If the leader is not pressing and pushing and driving, compelling, everyone that is supposedly following them in the hierarchy, the authority hierarchy, will be their attention now is going to be going to someone else. The grass is always greener in every culture. So the speed and the success of the business, if we're going to talk in a business sense, will have a relationship with the sense of urgency and the embodiment of urgency, among other values, like we've talked about preparation, just, because there can easily be a negative. I'm thinking about like the methed up wacko Nazis running across in the middle of the night, the French border or something, like hopped up on methamphetamine, totally like surprising everybody in France and winning very quickly. But, there were other core values that were being enacted that ultimately led to the downfall of that cult. Like, organism, collective organism. But anyway, I digress. So to press, to push, to drive, to compel. Urgere implies an external force or internal drive pushing forward. This is why I chose that Nietzschean quote, okay, about the power of suffering. Because I want to make an argument here as we near to the end here, is that with a goal and with adequate suffering, past and present, and with a goal, with a clear aim, now we have components of the formula of urgency, which ultimately will lead to success relative to what one knows, who one's with, how one's the how is like getting there, the plan, right? Like what one knows and what one knows one doesn't, who one is with. Like there's the team, there's the leader, there's the content, the team and the leader based on the content and the conversation, and all of the variables like externally, the environment that 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 presupposes the context or that influences the context that it, it the admixture of those variables equals context. uh the goal's role in a sense of urgency. How do you act if you don't know where you're going? So this is the thing. We need we benefit as individuals and as a business even. The we benefit from the from external events out of our control, creating tension, creating conflict, creating anxiety, fear, right? The known benefits from the unknown because the known needs the unknown to replenish the known. The spirit of the individual is replenished by chaos, by conflict, by because conflict presupposes the filtration process, the exercising of the self, of the stagnation of the self. It's like a you have a pond and you see that there's that in the middle of the pond. There's a water there's a water system where there's a fountain, and the fountain is, why is the fountain there? The fountain is putting, is essentially filtering the water. Because if it was just the pond, there's got to be some kind of movement in that water, or else it'll just stagnate and start to like eat itself and die. There's something about the nature, the world, this reality that stagnation, it leads to death. The organization eats itself, whether it's a business, it's a person's body, it's a civilization, whatever. So we need suffering, and suffering as a relationship with external movement, right? With movement, flow, change, and and so like this is where the goal comes in, because if we have a goal, that anxiety ends up becoming excitement, motivation, hope. It how it impacts our physiology is like all of a sudden feeling, whoa, good. I'm prepared to face the dragon, even though I'm David. I'm prepared to face Goliath, even though I don't have any. I don't have. I don't have add. Infinitum. Insert all the things I don't have. I don't even need them because I have something more powerful, and that's an aim, and that's suffering. I have urgency. I have something to prove, someone to prove, something to prove to myself and all of humanity. At the end of that quote, right? The beginning quote, it's inventiveness and courage, it's enduring, preserving, interpreting, exploiting, suffering, whatever has been granted to it of profundity, secret, mask, spirit, cunning, greatness, it not granted it through suffering, through the discipline of great suffering. All all people benefit from each individual's engagement with their suffering, and how each of us are using that jet propulsion system to create value for one another. So we have The urgency comes from, because in the absence of the goal, that anxiety that comes from the internal suffering and the external suffering. So things in our lives are not going the way as planned. We already have gone through lots of stuff that is damaging and painful that plagues us. So there's suffering internal. If we're going to use like that type of um, dichotomous thinking, right? Just for simplicity's sake, internal suffering and external suffering is crippling anxiety and defeat and victim. You're not having urgencies, right? So, like antonyms of urgency. This is where the value of like mentors and communities and education and so on. But like the opposite, right? Leisure, calmness, relaxation, unimportance, triviality, delay. But those are like the leisure, calmness, relaxation, unimportance, triviality, delay. I might be internally aligned, but this is interesting. Externally, things are, the world is at peace. Internally, I'm at peace. I'm at leisure, calmness, relaxation, unimportance, triviality, delay. The inevitability is if I'm in those things, if I'm in the state of being of those things, and the external world now goes to shit, and I haven't been preparing, I haven't been sacrificing, I haven't been eating my Wheaties, exercising, reading my P&Ls, practicing my sales moves, meeting with my teams, all the things. I become Osiris getting coup d'etat by Seth. That state of being, now it's, if you stop doing the things, maybe this is what they mean by like the discipline of the individual, like the willingness to take on voluntary suffering when you don't have to is what prepares you for the inevitable war where your culture is aligned and you're successful. States, and the opposite is you're not going to be prepared. Things are going to go bad. That's why the culture is revealed in the crisis, because have we taken on the true mark of an individual's power is when they take on voluntary suffering, when they don't have to. That is about as inspiring and respectful and leads to trust of the people around them. It's like they know exactly who they're dealing with, and that's someone they can count on. States opposing the drive to act, procrastination, lethargy, complacency, indifference, apathy. Ugh, you know, lack of concern, no rush, taking one's time, urgency matter. Yeah, yeah. The culture drifts into complacency and indifference. It loses its edge. The walls start to crumble. They're weak. They can fall apart in a second, and the enemy will win, whether that's inside out or outside in. It just starts decaying. So, what are some examples, right? Other than the Culture Matters podcast, which I would love to read this. This was very actually interesting to me, and I wonder what the relationship with pride is with taking on voluntary suffering, being in the midst of external conflict, surrounded by people that do believe in you and are rooting for you, and you've prepared accordingly, and you have the competence to really give it your best shot. It's that process of becoming, of overcoming, of working through that is most meaningful, that you'll look back in the past and say, in the future rather, and say, those are the memories that I'm most proud of. And that's what I'm going to reflect on the last days of my life is how I showed up then. That's the legacy that we'll leave behind for the people that will talk about us long after we're gone is how we showed up then and who we were then. The values that we reflected into the world. I hmm. In closing, I want to share some interesting anecdotes here. Examples of cultures with a sense of urgency. Amazon under Jeff Bezos, they were obsessed with speed and customer focus, day one mentality. Every day was the first day. Fascinating. Tesla under Elon Musk aggressively compresses timelines to push innovation faster than competitors. I had someone on the Culture Matters podcast that talked about a mortgage I don't know if I don't think they were a founder. They were an owner of a mortgage brand that had 10-minute meetings, and if the meeting was going well, it was on an episode with Rogelio Gortzen. If they would add 5 minutes to the meeting, but the fact that they had their meetings compressed down to 10 minutes, that's like super clear of what their aim is and what they're looking for. I guess if you ask a couple key questions and you tell the truth, it's just totally, but the fact that that was even intention. How can I get the most value in this meeting? The speed and aggressive, that reminds me of this, aggressively compressing timelines to push innovation faster than competitors. I think there's a helpful if one is has suffering from lethargy or sloth or leisure, over leisure or procrastination. It's Nietzsche used to say to himself, um, or start the day with the most pressing, difficult thing on his plate. Wow, I have not done that. That is not something that I've done, and I think that I'm glad I'm talking about this live. That might just if that might just change my life. That might just change everything. I'm afraid to do that. That who will I be if am the type of person that does that? Because I already think I don't think very well of myself. That's actually the truth of the matter. But there are things that I have accomplished that I'm having a hard time even admitting it to myself because I don't think well of myself. And that's slowing myself, not slowing everything down, which is partially, that's part of why I'm talking about this urgency, is that there's, capacity of unbelievable urgency and there's capacities of debilitating angst and procrastination, and that's not that's lowering my success and the success of everyone around me at varying degrees. And considering how many people I influence that are extremely successful, uh, I could do a hell of a lot of good growing up a bit and working on these things. So in one sense, I'm very proud of and have a place to be proud of. The 540 podcasts is an example, or the million words or so that I've written. I don't know if it's words, for the books for our clients and so on. Over the years, maybe I should do like a self audit, all the things I've actually accomplished, and look at that for a while, and that'll help me gain some self worth, so that I can so that I can fully accept that value, and then I'll instead of procrastinating on the 10% of things that are lowering that 90% of unbelievably high intensity urgency and being kind of wobbly and disjointed, I can accept the greatness of the things that are great and have been great, and then conquer that, make that 10% down to 0% of what is a weak spot. And maybe that'll just overall make me better, you better, the guests better, our clients better, the show better, everything is better. And that's what Nietzsche's, advice could lead to, of picking the most important thing that has to get done and doing it first thing in the morning, facing that biggest fear, so that the suffering that we have innately that pushes us to do all this stuff, to make all this movement, to create all these things, and that ultimately helps other people in the world, doesn't crush us through our process of doing so. Apple, extreme urgency around product excellence and launch deadlines. One thing I figure out about urgency, there's a relationship with truth telling and urgency in a culture, because a culture that is just suffering from its lies, its deceits, is slow. It's people are afraid to speak up in the company. There's consequences, retribution, apprehensions. There's anxiety. It's unclear of who's doing what and when and what their role is and how and where the company's going and why. And who shouldn't be there and who should, and how to recognize and incentivize those that should, and how to politely ask those to leave that shouldn't. Like urgency, you cannot have urgency with um, cowardice, debilitating cowardice. You need the goal, you need the suffering. Man, if you hadn't had a lot of suffering and things are really bad, you're probably screwed. But either way, you need a goal. If you have a goal, even if whatever that suffering that you have gone through, it's relative. Like you can't compare people's sufferings. There's like a subjectivity to it. So whatever one's sufferings, because everyone has sufferings that they, interpret as their suffering. If one goes through the process of mapping out their life and having a goal and working towards it, they will derive meaning from comparing their self today, who they could be. Yeah. And then you get that sense this is that one rule in 12 rules. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today, which is, I think, is rule two. Rule two. No, it's rule four. Because rule two is make friends with the people that want, no, it's, I just, if you don't use it, you lose it. Stand up straight with your shoulders back. Treat yourself like someone you're responsible for helping. Make friends with people that want the best for you. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. Do not let your children do things that make you dislike them. Put your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. Pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. Tell the truth or at least don't lie. Assume the person you listen to knows something you don't. Be precise in your speech. I fail at that. Do not interrupt children when they are skateboarding. Pet a cat when you encounter one on the street. Yeah, those are the 12 rules for life. Southwest Airlines, Herb Kelleher era, urgency to keep operations lean and customer friendly. World leaders who demonstrated urgency well. Winston Churchill, urgency during World War II, rallied Britain to immediate action against Nazi Germany. Abraham Lincoln, urgency to preserve the Union and abolish slavery during the Civil War. Franklin D. Roosevelt, urgency in the New Deal, mobilizing programs to combat the Great Depression. Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore, urgency to transform Singapore from a struggling port to a global economic powerhouse. Businesses that had urgency but lost it. Kodak, initially a leader in photography, but lost urgency around digital innovation. Blockbuster failed to act urgently against streaming disruptions like Netflix. BlackBerry, once dominant in mobile, but slow to adapt to touch screens and app ecosystems. Yahoo missed opportunities like buying Google early due to lack of decisive urgency. Cultures or civilizations that had urgency but lost it. The Roman Empire, early urgency and expansion, innovation, and governance. Later, complacency led to decline. The Ottoman Empire, initially urgent in conquest and trade, stagnated due to resistance to modernization. The Ming Dynasty in China, early maritime urgency with Zheng's He's voyages, later isolationism, stunted progression. So it's interesting. Urgency is revealed in that we conflict with external systems, external parties, external events. It forces us to have that aim to leverage that suffering and to do it with others, which leads to cooperation, communication, relationship, identity formation, cultural synchronicity. The Mayan civilization, initial urgency in agriculture, architecture, and astronomy, collapses partially from internal conflicts and resource exhaustion. In the absence of urgency and other values we will discuss in these coming episodes, like preparation. We crumble, we collapse, we fall apart, and we're destroyed by both outside and internal forces. Why urgency is important for growing a business? It drives innovation, adaptation, and fast-changing markets. It creates momentum. It creates clarity, execution. Without urgency, we drift into mediocrity. I want to say, I am proud of the outpace, or the effort and energy that has been put into the Culture Matters podcast will not pay off in many respects for years to come. But the sacrifice and intention and attention I've had to uh, put forth through almost 1,000 episodes, and half of them in just a year, because the show's been around since 2019 in this form. So if that's like, let's say 6 years, easy, right? In one of the years, 16.5%, because 33 would be th times three and six. 16, yeah, 16.5%. In 16.5% of the time of the 6 years, one year, about half of the episodes were created. That shows how much power is untapped in this machine and how much better I can be. Now, of course, there are other things that fell, that became imbalanced from that output. Of course, it's reflecting back, it's looking back at, okay, what could have been done better, and how could I have showed up here? But you can't skip the repetitions. You can't skip. It's like I'm chasing the the qualities of the advisor, the teacher, the student, the consultant, the culture architect that can only be developed from doing 50,000 interviews that ultimately will be Archimedes, give me a lever, big, and something big enough that I can move the world. Give me a lever enough distance, or something. I don't know the quote. What did Archimedes say about the lever? uh, it's fun. This is fun. Fun. I'm having fun. I hope you're having fun. Yeah. Give me a place to stand and a lever long enough, and I will move the world. If you're listening to this, share this with a friend who needs a sense of urgency. Please, no, don't. Leave us a review in the Culture Matters podcast. Subscribe, share this with 10 people, and we will see you next time on the Culture Matters podcast.